Welcome to the Fundamentals of Fitness, the podcast where we strip away the noise, the guilt, and the unrealistic expectations around health and fitness, and we focus on what actually works in real life. I'm Alison, your no-nonsense coach. If you spent any time on social media recently, you've probably seen someone claiming they've discovered the secret to fat loss. Maybe it was a detox tea, a supplement that promises to melt your fat, a 6-minute ab workout, or perhaps someone telling you that eating after 8 p.m. is ruining your progress. The fitness industry is full of advice. The problem is, not all of it is good. In fact, some of it is completely wrong. And unfortunately, myths have a habit of sticking around because they're simple, they're catchy, and they often sound believable. Today's episode is all about separating the facts from fiction. Not to embarrass anyone who's believed in these myths, I think we've all fallen for one or two over the years. But it's to help you understand the science behind them so you can make better decisions with confidence. One of the things I love most about my job is helping people understand why something works. Because once you understand the reason behind it, you're far less likely to be distracted by every new trend that appears online. And let's be honest, fitness trends move fast. 1 week, carbohydrates are the enemy. The next, they're essential. 1 week, everyone is talking about fasted cardio. The next week, it's about cold plunges. Then it's supplements, then hormones, then detoxes. It can feel exhausting trying to work out who to trust. That's why I always come back to the same questions. What does the evidence actually tell us? Now, science isn't perfect. It's always evolving. But good science tells us something far more valuable than a quick fix. It gives us the principles that continue to work even when the trends change. So today we're going to look at some of the biggest myths I hear from clients, explain where they came from, what the evidence says, and more importantly, what you should do instead. So pop on those trainers, grab that cuppa, and let's bust some myths. Let's start with fat loss, because this is probably where I hear the biggest myths. And the first one is a classic. Myth number 1, sweating means you're burning more fat. And I can completely understand why people can believe this. You finish a workout absolutely drenched in sweat. Your clothes are dripping. Your face is bright red. It feels like you've worked incredibly hard. So it seems logical to assume you've burned loads of fat, right? But sweating and fat loss are two completely different things. Sweat is simply your body's cooling system. And when your body temperature rises, your brain tells your sweat glands to release fluid onto your skin. And as that sweat evaporates, it helps you cool down. That's its job. So it isn't fat leaving your body. In fact, if you weigh less immediately after your sweaty workout, most of that weight is simply water. Drink enough afterwards, and much of that weight will come straight back. Fat loss happens in a completely different way. When your body uses stored fat for energy, it's broken down through a series of metabolic processes. The carbon from those fat molecules is ultimately released mainly as carbon dioxide when you breathe out, while some is converted to water that leaves the body through normal bodily processes. So yes, you can lose fat during exercise, but sweating isn't the reason why. Myth number 2. You can burn fat from one specific area. This is what we call spot reduction. It's the idea that if you do hundreds of sit-ups, you'll burn belly fat. Or if you do tricep extensions, you'll lose the fat from the backs of your arms. And I wish it worked like that. It would make my job much easier. But unfortunately, that's not how human physiology works. Where your body stores fat and where it loses fat from first is influenced by factors like genetics, hormones, age, and sex. When you're in an energy deficit over time, your body draws from fat stores from across the body. You don't get to choose the order. So yes, strengthening your abdominal muscles is worthwhile, but doing crunches alone won't specifically remove the fat from your stomach. I remember a client saying to me, Alison, I hate the backs of my arms. Can we just work on my bingo wings? And it's such a common question. So we did include exercises for triceps because building muscle there can improve strength and shape. But we also talked about the bigger picture. Fat loss wasn't about finding one magical exercise. It's about creating sustainable habits that supported her goals overall. A few months later, she'd noticed changes not just in her arms, but across her whole body. Not because we found a secret exercise, but because she stayed consistent. Myth number 3. Eating after 8 p.m. makes you gain weight, and this one refuses to disappear. The truth is, your body doesn't suddenly switch to fat storage mode because the clock strikes 8. What matters far more is how much you're eating over time, the quality of your diet, your activity levels, and your overall lifestyle. Now, there are some reasons late night eating can be linked with weight gain. People often snack mindlessly in front of the television. They may eat because they're tired, stressed, or bored rather than hungry. Those behaviors can increase your calorie intake, but that's very different from saying that the time itself causes fat gain. If you finish work late and eat dinner at 9 p.m., that meal isn't automatically harming your progress. Your body doesn't wear a watch. Elite athletes don't organize their nutrition around myths. They organize it around performance. A marathon runner finishing an evening training session still needs to recover. A racing driver completing a late simulator session still needs to refuel. Recovery nutrition doesn't suddenly become ineffective because it's after a certain time of day. The focus is on giving the body what it needs, not what the clock says. And that's really the theme of this episode. So many fitness myths sound convincing because they offer simple answers, but the human body is wonderfully complex, and understanding the complexity helps you make much better decisions. If there's one area of fitness that's changed the most over the last decade, it's strength training. Thankfully, more and more people are recognizing that lifting weights isn't just for bodybuilders. It's one of the best things you can do for your health. But despite that, I still hear the same myths almost every week. Myth number 4. Women will get bulky if they lift heavy weights. This is probably the biggest myth I hear. And I completely understand where it comes from. If the only image you've ever seen of women lifting weights are professional bodybuilders, it's easy to think that's the inevitable outcome. But professional physique athletes are the results of years of highly specialized training, carefully controlled nutrition, favorable genetics, and in some sports, performance-enhancing drugs. They are not representative of what happens when the average woman starts strength training. Most women simply don't have the hormonal environment to build large amounts of muscle naturally. Instead, what usually happens is something very different. You become stronger, you improve your bone density, you support your joints, and you build lean muscle that can help improve body composition. You often feel more confident in your own body. And as we get older, especially through perimenopause and menopause, maintaining muscle becomes even more important. It helps preserve independence, supports metabolic health, and reduces the risk of falls and fractures later in life. So if you're avoiding weights because you're worried about becoming bulky, the evidence simply doesn't support that fear. I remember one lady saying to me, I don't want to lift anything heavy, I just want to tone up. It's a phrase I hear a lot. So I asked her a question, what do you think toned actually means? And she paused, and then she admitted she'd never really thought about it. The truth is that what most people describe as toned is simply having enough muscle to create shape whilst carrying less body fat over it. In other words, the thing she wanted was the very thing she was trying to avoid. Once she understood that, her whole approach changed and she started strength training confidently. And over time, she became stronger, more capable, and happier with how she looked. Not because she chased toning, because she built muscle. Myth number 5, no pain, no gain. Now, this saying has been around for decades, and like many myths, there is a tiny grain of truth hidden inside it. Training should challenge you. If you're trying to get stronger, fitter, or faster, your body needs a reason to adapt. That means stepping outside your comfort zone from time to time. But challenge is not the same as pain. Sharp pain, dizziness, chest pain, or pain that changes the way you move are not signs of a good workout. They're signs that something needs attention. Even muscle soreness isn't a reliable measure of how effective a session was. Have you ever had a workout that left you barely able to sit down the next day? That soreness, often called delayed onset muscle soreness or DOMS, is common when you try something new or significantly increase training load. But here's the important part for you. Being sore doesn't automatically mean it was a better workout. And not being sore doesn't mean the workout didn't work. Progress is measured by improvements in strength, fitness, movement quality, and performance over time, not by how much it hurts to walk downstairs the next morning. Myth number 6. Lifting weights is bad for your joints. This is another one I hear surprisingly often. People worry that lifting weights will wear out their knees, damage their backs, or make their arthritis worse. When strength training is done with appropriate technique, sensible progression, and exercises suited to the individual, the opposite is often true. Strong muscles help support and stabilize your joints. Resistance training can improve bone density, strengthen connective tissues, and make everyday movements feel easier. In fact, strength training is frequently recommended as part of the management of many long-term musculoskeletal conditions because of the benefits it provides. The key is choosing the right exercises, using appropriate loads, and progressing gradually, not avoiding strength training altogether. One thing I've noticed working with athletes is that strength training is rarely seen as optional. Whether it's racing drivers improving neck strength, runners building resilience, or swimmers developing power in the water, strength work is part of that foundation. It's not there to make them look a certain way. It's there to help them perform better, stay healthier, and reduce their risk of injury. That's a really useful mindset shift. Instead of asking, will lifting weights make me bulky? Try asking, how will being stronger improve my life? For most people, the answer is in almost every way. And that's the beauty of understanding the science. Once you understand why something works, you stop making decisions based on fear. You start making decisions based on evidence. If you've ever opened social media looking for nutrition advice, I'm sorry. Because it can feel like walking into a room where everyone is shouting different answers. One person tells you that carbohydrates are the enemy. Another says fruit contains way too much sugar. Someone else is trying to sell you a detox tea. And before long, eating a simple meal feels more complicated than it needs to be. Let's clear a few of these things up. Myth number 7, carbohydrates make you fat. And this has been around for years, and it's understandable why people can believe it. Many people reduce carbohydrates and initially lose weight, so they assume carbohydrates were the problem. But what often happens is a little more complicated. When you reduce carbohydrates, your body also uses some of its stored glycogen, the form in which carbohydrates are stored in your muscles and liver. Each gram of glycogen is stored with several grams of water, 3 to 4. So when glycogen stores fall, you lose water too. That's why people often see a noticeable drop on the scales during the first week or two of a low-carb diet. But that's very different from saying carbohydrates themselves cause fat gain. Fat gain happens when, over time, we consistently consume more energy than our bodies use. That energy can come from fat. It can also come from carbohydrates. It can even come from protein if eaten in excess. Carbohydrates aren't the villain. They're actually your body's preferred source of fuel for many activities, particularly higher intensity or long duration exercise. If you've ever tried doing a hard run, a spin class, or a heavy leg session with very little carbs on board, you'll probably know exactly what I mean. The goal isn't to fear carbohydrates. It's to choose mostly good quality sources and eat amounts that supports your goals. Myth number 8. You need a detox. This one really frustrates me, mostly because it's become such a successful marketing tool. You'll see teas, juices, powders, expensive programs all claiming to detox your body. Here's the truth for you. Your body already has an incredible detoxification system. Your liver, your kidneys, your lungs, your digestive system. They're working around the clock every single day, filtering waste products and maintaining balance. If those organs stop doing their job properly, you don't need a detox tea, you need urgent medical care. Now, can you support your body's natural systems? Absolutely. And you do that by eating a balanced and varied diet, staying well hydrated, getting enough sleep, limiting excess alcohol, exercising regularly. Those things genuinely support your health. But expensive detox products? The evidence simply isn't there. I had a client arrive with a cupboard full of supplements, protein powders, fat burners, detox drinks, metabolic boosters, vitamin gummies, meal replacement shakes. He laughed and he said, I think I've spent more on supplements than I have on actual food. And when we looked at his daily routine, the biggest issues weren't a lack of supplements. He wasn't eating enough protein. He was skipping breakfast. He wasn't sleeping well. And he rarely drank enough water. So instead of buying anything else, we focused on the basics. And within a few weeks, he felt more energetic, was recovering better from training, and making steady progress. Not because we found a miracle product, but because we stopped looking for shortcuts. Myth number 9. This leads in really well. Supplements are essential. Now, don't get me wrong. Supplements absolutely have their place. I recommend some to clients when they're appropriate. For example, if someone is struggling to meet their protein needs, a protein shake can be a convenient option. If blood tests or dietary intake suggests a nutrient deficiency, certain supplements may be beneficial under the guidance of a healthcare professional. As someone who follows a vegan diet myself, I know the importance of nutrients like vitamin B12 and D in certain situations. But here's the key word: supplement. They are designed to supplement a good diet, not replace one. No supplement can compensate for consistently poor sleep. No supplement can replace regular exercise. No supplement can undo an overall unbalanced diet. The fundamentals still matter most. One thing that often surprises people is how unglamorous elite nutrition can be. Working with athletes has reinforced something I already believed. The basics are rarely skipped. Meals are planned around training. Hydration is taken seriously. Protein intake is consistent. Recovery nutrition is prioritized. Yes, some athletes use supplements, but they're usually adding them onto a solid foundation, not trying to build the house from the roof down. And that's a lesson all of us can apply, because spending money on the latest product promising incredible results, ask yourself, have I mastered the basics? Because the basics will outperform the fancy stuff every time. So we've busted a few myths today, but here's the thing. The fitness industry isn't going to stop creating new ones. There will always be another miracle product, another revolutionary workout, another influencer claiming they've discovered the thing that you've been missing. And honestly, some of these people genuinely believe what they're saying. Others are just trying to sell you something. But either way, you need to know how to separate evidence from good marketing. Because once you can do that, you can stop chasing every new trend and start trusting the fundamentals. Ask one simple question. When you hear a big fitness claim, I want you to pause and ask yourself something. Does this sound too good to be true? Because if someone promises to lose 10 pounds in a week, melt belly fat with one exercise, eat whatever you want and still lose weight, never exercise again, this supplement can change everything. Be curious, not cynical, curious. Ask yourself, what's the evidence? Be careful with absolutes. Another thing I look out for is absolute language. You should never eat this. You must do this. This is the only way. Science rarely speaks like this. Good coaches rarely speak like that. Human beings are wonderfully complicated. There are very few things in nutrition or exercise that apply to every single person in exactly the same way. Context matters. Goals matter. Medical history matters. Lifestyle matters. Preferences matter. That's why good coaching is personalized, not copied from a 30-second social media video. Follow the money, and this one can feel uncomfortable, but it's important. Ask yourself, is this person educating me, or are they trying to sell me something? Now, there's nothing wrong with selling products or services. I do it too. Coaching is my profession, my love, my passion. But I never want someone to feel they have to buy something because I've frightened them into believing they're broken. Fear is a very effective marketing tool. If you don't buy this, if you don't detox, if you don't take this supplement, if you don't follow this exact method, take a step back. The best coaches build confidence. They don't create dependency. One of my favorite moments with a client happened after she'd been working with me for about 6 months, and she came into the gym laughing. She said, I saw one of those ads online, the one saying I could lose loads of weight in 2 weeks with this miracle drink. And then she smiled at me and she said, 6 months ago, I'd probably have bought that. Now I just roll my eyes. Honestly, that made me feel incredibly proud. Not because she'd ignored the advert, but because she'd learned to think critically. She understood enough about how her body worked that she wasn't looking for a magic fix anymore. She trusted the process. And that's one of the greatest gifts education can give you. The fundamentals never go out of fashion. And here's something I find fascinating. Every few years, the fitness industry seems to rediscover something that's been around for decades. Walking suddenly becomes trendy again. Strength training becomes trendy again. Protein becomes trendy. Sleep becomes trendy. The headlines change, the marketing changes, and the hashtags change. But the fundamentals, they stay remarkably consistent. Move your body regularly. Eat mostly nutritious foods. Get enough protein. Strength train. Sleep well. Recover properly. And manage stress where you can. Repeat those behaviors consistently. None of them are exciting. None of them are revolutionary. But they work. And they worked long before social media existed. So, before next week's episode, I'd like you to try something for me. The next time you see a fitness claim online, don't immediately believe it. Don't immediately dismiss it either. Just pause. Ask yourself 3 questions. Is there good evidence for this? Is someone trying to sell me something? Does this fit with what we already know about human physiology? Those 3 questions will save you a huge amount of time, money, and frustration. I want to leave you with this thought. Your body isn't a mystery. It's not broken, and it certainly doesn't need fixing by the latest trend on social media. Most of the time, the answers are surprisingly simple. They're just not always easy. And that's why they're called fundamentals, because they continue to work, even when the trends change. If there's one thing I hope you take away from today's episode, it's this. Don't chase the newest ideas. Master the timeless ones. The basics may not be glamorous. They may not go viral, but they're the things that consistently change lives. So stay curious, ask questions, look for evidence, and don't be afraid to challenge bold claims, even if they're made by someone with millions of followers. Because the more you understand your body, the less likely you are to be misled. And that's exactly why I created the fundamentals of fitness, to help you cut through the noise and focus on what actually works. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, I'd really appreciate it if you could follow the podcast and leave a review. It genuinely helps more people find the show. And if you know someone who's always sending you the latest fitness trend from social media, share this episode with them. It might just save them a lot of money. Until next time, train with structure, recover with intention, and stay driven by science, built for performance. I will see you in the next one.